Hi, my name is William Scott. I'm the Assistant Town Administrator, and the process we are working on today is to determine the reuse of the Matakees Middle School site. It also contains an elementary school, which is still in flux in terms of planning. It's a 70-acre site that's reasonably adjacent to an exit off of 6, so it has some potential for economic development. We have other committees. There is a housing group, there's an open space, water supply group, economic group, municipal facilities group, and things like that. And I don't want to steal the thunder from the consultants, so I'll just get right to it. The important thing is you're the group that represents a chamber who would then also meet with the community and economic development group, and they're going to bring both of your ideas will come together to get 3 ideas and then try to get 1 idea. And that can be a blending of multiple ideas within that 1 idea. Then we hire a consultant and move forward from there to try to create the overall plan. The important aspect is you have a voice now. And so what we don't want to do is hire a consultant and then just have people come up to the podium and say, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do this. We just want to front load this process with as many ideas as possible so that we can then hire the consultant to put them all together. And we're in the process of doing that. So the advantage here is when they start, you've already had your idea on the table and it's forwarded to them to try to meld all these different ideas together. So who's next? Alexa or
Do you want to? I can just, yeah. First of all, I want to say thank you for all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules. I think it offers an opportunity for the business community to give their perspective on this site. And I'd like to show our appreciation to the town of Yarmouth for allowing that to happen. I would also just like to take a minute and thank the Economic Development Committee who approved very quickly last night the funding so that we were able to have a consultant here today and also for the additional 2 meetings. So I want to thank them for that. I do also want to acknowledge that we did receive 6 or 7 of the completed forms prior to today's meeting, so I'll be happy to share those with you. And again, just thank you for being here, and let's have a great conversation about what are the possibilities for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me through this? Because I might actually take this for when I advance the slides. Okay. My name is Alexis Lanzalata. I'm with Barrett Planning Group, and I am here with my colleague Fiona Gain. So we were actually already working with the town for the housing team as part of this process, and I'll explain who the different teams are. I know Bill explained that there are other groups also talking kind of concurrently with the idea of synthesizing a little bit later in the process some of the different ideas and thoughts that people with various perspectives have for the site in a way to kind of ensure holistic planning. And so we were already doing work supporting the housing team. And then Karen asked if we could also assist with the economic development team. And so we are also very grateful to the CEDC for their vote last night. That said, that does mean if there are any little issues in the slides, please know that that is in part because they were finalized, after we knew everything was all set. So I already know that I omitted a glaring error in the current use of the field. So I am so glad that we have representation from recreation use of this site. So thank you for thanks for bearing with me on that. But I'm going to walk you through kind of an overview of the process and then kind of focus on what we want to talk to you about today from your perspective. And this is a series of 3 meetings. And the whole point of today's meeting is to really keep things, as broad as you want. So don't limit yourself to current zoning. Don't limit yourself to existing infrastructure concerns and things like that, because there is possibility for doing things to address most of those issues. So we want you today to think big. Part of our job is between this meeting and the next time we see you is to take the things that we heard and kind of do a little more research and have some responses and, okay, well, if you wanted to do this, these are things you might need to look at. These are opportunities that exist. These are constraints. But that sort of, detail, that's our job to think through with staff between now and the next meeting. Right now, your job is to give, big, exciting ideas that would help really support the town. So I'm going to see if I can. Okay. All right. So I actually would love to start. Did that just sounded weird? Sorry. Here we go. I do want to start with introductions because even though you may all be familiar to each other through your work with the Chamber, I do want to hear a little bit about the businesses that you are a part of. So we just have kind of a sense of who's in the room. And then I will go over the general, the MUC process that stands for Mattachey's Utilization Committee, and then talk about the site itself. Then we're going to go into the discussion. And then we'll go over next steps. We also will have time for public comment if anybody is in the room or on Zoom who would like to share their thoughts as well. So the Mattachey's Reutilization Committee process, Bill did speak a bit to just broadly how there are these other teams. And so here you are, economic development. And economic development is consisting of the CEDC, the Chamber, and the local business community. So that's this team. There's also a housing team who's kind of looking at the site from a housing perspective, recreation, education, open space and water supply, and municipal services. And I'm sure just zooming out, you can see how so many of these things can connect quite beautifully. And so that's why I think the town's approach is to say, okay, well, let's start with the economic development team really kind of zeroing in on economic development potential for the site. And then there is the Mattachey's Utilization Committee that is meeting kind of at intervals between and synthesizing the things that are being heard. So I'll go through the kind of sequence of how the meetings go. But first, before we dive into that, I think we'll just go around, and if you don't mind just sharing your name and telling us if you're here as a business owner, we'd love to hear about your work in the town. So we could start here.
Sure. My name is Parth Patel. We own and develop boutique hotels. Currently, one is Freebird. The other one is Old Tidewater, which is getting relaunched this May, called the Uncommoner Hotel.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Parth. Jamie?
Good morning, Jamie Vieira, Davenport Companies. Here in Yarmouth, we own and operate Thurwood Place, a senior living community, Blue Rock Golf Course, Cape Cod Fence Company, Davenport Building Company, and the holder of several commercial properties and several hundred residential year-round rental properties.
Great, thank you.
My name is Jack Hines. I'm in the hotel business and other real estate development in 28 Yarmouth.
Wonderful. Aidan?
My name is Aidan Delaney. I'm from the Skipper Chowder House in South Yarmouth.
I'm Alan Delaney, Aidan's dad, and Skipper Chowder House also.
Molly DeMilliner. I'm the Executive Director of the Cultural Center of Cape Cod. We're a full-service art center for performing and visual arts with a location in South Yarmouth, as well as in downtown Hyannis now.
Andrew Laird. I'm on the Mattachey's Utilization Committee. I'm here to listen.
Great. And if I say anything incorrect about your process, please feel free at any time to chime in because I'm sure, yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. Holly?
I'm Holly Handerhan. I GM beachfront properties here in South Yarmouth.
Mary Vilbon, President of the Yarmouth Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning, Dave Botting. Until recently, I was president and CEO for a nonprofit based here in Yarmouth that provided supports for adults with intellectual disabilities. I'm in the process of phasing out of that role. I'm also director of finance for AC Independence, which is a Cape-based soccer club. that has over 400 participants involved.
Hi, I'm Catherine Casser here from Captain Parker's. We're a restaurant over on Route 28 in West Yarmouth.
I'm Mike Barry. I represent the Cape Cod Senior Softball League. It's about 400 seniors, men and women, engaged in recreation and competitive softball and other activities.
Good morning. I'm Paul Nizwicki. I'm the CEO of the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce.
Great, thanks. It sounds like we have quite a range here, and even just hearing your backgrounds, you know, the wheels are already turning about the different areas within this kind of land use team perspective that are also kind of just concurrently represented, because as you all know, economic development ties into so many other aspects of what makes your community. So that said, how do all of these teams kind of work together, and what is the long-term process of that, and how does our work today feed into a larger sequence of events? So the economic development team, the land use team, is going to be kind of led by the Chamber and the CEDC. And so all of the teams, they're having these this three-part meeting series to arrive at a proposal at kind of two levels that they would then ultimately share with the Matakees Utilization Committee. And so right now we are here, meeting one, affectionately called Run Amok, where we are just thinking big and broadly. And, you know, I know you have maps in front of you that are looking at the site, but also just holistically in the context of how this could really support the town as a whole. So we are thinking big today. The CEDC at their February 24th meeting, they're going to have the same process. And then we'll be working with the department to synthesize and prepare for the second meeting, which, as I mentioned, is where we do a lot of that background work of examining, based on the suggestions that we get from all of you, just the suggestions that we get about the uses. Are there constraints that the town might want to consider? Are there possible resources the town may not be aware of? And just kind of contextualizing things, bringing them, you know, closer to the ground. And then so at that second meeting, where you'll actually be in the same, you'll be together with the CEDC at that time. The goal at that second meeting, it's very ambitious, but is to bring it to three big ideas at that point, considering the constraints and opportunities and hearing from each other about, you know, all of the different ideas. And I'll tell you, having done this with the housing team, we left that first meeting with, there were so many ideas that people suggested that weren't mutually exclusive of each other and really could support each other. So I know it sounds overwhelming to think of getting down to three ideas in that meeting from what we do today and our background work, but I suspect there'll be a lot of things that actually aren't excluding someone else's ideas and could potentially fold together into a larger idea. So that'll be meeting two. The date for that, I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, but is March 31st. And then meeting three is where the group, again, with both the CEDC and the Chamber, really decides on a preferred program, kind of at two different levels. And then from there, the team, this is where we would be working to draft a proposal to MUC, who then kind of reviews everything to eventually work with a consultant at that time to really kind of work on a plan for the site, taking all of the feedback into consideration. So this is just a diagram from the November memo that the committee sent out. And so it's just showing how kind of all of this will funnel down. So today we're running amok, then we kind of filter through and then come up with a proposal. So it is a long-term process. Long-term, but you know, it's going to go fast. But so I did want to take a minute to talk about who the CEDC, you know, who they are in town and what they do. Is anybody here other than Mary, is anybody here, does anyone regularly participate in or attend or watch the CEDC meetings or kind of know what their charge is? All right, well, I'll give you a little background, but staff, please feel free to chime in if I'm missing anything. But the Community and Economic Development Committee, CEDC, they are a town body that they coordinate the economic development activities of the town and maintain familiarity with state and local resources that may provide aid. So that is their overarching purpose. If you look at their the charge, there's a lot of kind of other pieces within that, but that's just they're a town body with that purpose, and they report to the select board. They work with the Department of Community Development, and they receive professional and administrative support from the department. Please let me know if this membership is not up to date, but I believe it has 7 members, 5 at large, and then the director of the chamber and a planning board representative.
It's changed slightly. Mary, the director of Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, so
And the only other thing is just a reminder for everybody, the CEDC also oversees the Tourism Revenue Preservation Fund.
Thank you.
Which I think most people are probably familiar with.
Great. So we will be sharing the slides digitally as well, and any feedback that we'll make sure that that is noted. Thank you. And they generally meet the second Tuesday of the month at 4. Right?
5.
5.
We'll make sure you have the right.
Sorry, this is, I was
sorry.
looking, just going, yeah, sorry. Thank you. Thanks, Karen. All right, so site conditions. I do want to give a limited overview, and this is where I might ask the rec department to chime in a bit too. But so for the current site has uses on it already, and this is where I know I'm omitting something glaringly, which is the fields. I was so focused on the buildings and the infrastructure. So, but the actual structures that are in use, the gym and auditorium of the existing school is actively used. And I learned at the housing committee how frequently used, and just kind of that, I think a lot of people that almost changed their perspective a bit about the value of that. And then there is the Emmy Small Elementary. It is, I think it is, that's in flux, as Bill mentioned. And then there is ground mounted solar, which is on the site as well. And then there are athletic fields. Do you want to speak a little bit about to the current use for recreation? Unless, if there's anything that I'm missing, just because I know you had that.
Can everyone hear me? Sure. Whether the microphone. So kind of what we do, we run a lot of our programs at the Matakey site, utilizing the gym, auditorium, and some of the other band and chorus rooms inside the building. So currently what we're running is most of our basketball leagues from ages pre-K, so ages 3 all the way to adult basketball, where we have people in their 60s playing in our adult league. We run indoor soccer. We do pickleball during the day. Thank you. The day and evening. We do pickleball lessons there. We do our February and April vacation weeks, where we do the week-long vacation. We have 40 to 60 kids there for the full week, each vacation week. We do paint nights, community events with a flash of creativity. We have a little builders program where we have kids pre-K ages to 6, where they put together little wood projects using screwdrivers, small hammers. We have our Halloween event there, where we hand out candy to trick-or-treaters throughout the halls. We do a homeschool open gym to give homeschool kids the opportunity to have a gym class each week. Some new programs we've added just this fall is Gaga Ball. So we have an inflatable Gaga Ball pit. I don't know if anyone knows what Gaga Ball is, but it's a big octagon, and it's kind of a form of dodgeball where they have to hit it with the palm of their hand, and if they hit them below the knees, then they're out. So that's super popular in our summer camp. So we're moving that to Matakey's as well. We're doing a Game On club, which is video games and board games, where kids can come and they play video games and board games in a controlled setting. We've also partnered with Skate Cape Cod, which is a roller skating nonprofit where they do skating lessons, fitness skating, family skate. And that's the signups for that have been pretty popular so far. The use of the fields, Whitey Soccer uses the fields in the spring and fall seasons, with hundreds of kids taking part in that. Some other programs that we've been looking at to add is volleyball, floor hockey, ring hockey, handball, dodgeball, just basically any kind of gym activity that can be placed in there. In spring, so I have some numbers just to throw at you, just the use of the building this past 2024. So this is just Matakey's numbers, not our overall program numbers. So in the spring, we had 245 kids and adults using the building. In the summer, we had 72 kids and adults through our basketball league and open gym basketball. In the fall, we had 275 participants, and this winter we have 485 participants. So just in this last year alone, we've had over 1,075 registered participants using the building. So
Thank you.
it's getting a lot of use.
Yeah, yes. Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm glad you were here to speak to that because the staff are going to have a lot of expertise on the current use, and we certainly don't want to omit any details. So thank you. And so just other kind of site conditions just to be aware of. There are wetlands on portions of the property, so that does, limit the areas of the site that would lend themselves to reuse. And there are priority habitat or critical natural landscape areas as well. The soils and grades do not appear to be an impediment to development at this time, just based on, GIS soil information, but, further exploration likely would occur. And then it is in a zone 2 of multiple drinking water wells, which means, so their extension of sewer may be warranted to protect those wells. Again, a lot of these things are in flux and there's still a lot of kind of learning about the site. It is zoned R40, so just high level, what that means is there's kind of like limited lower residential uses like single family duplexes, accessory apartments, and commercial uses are not allowed within that district as it is currently zoned. So just to give some context of, so here's the site. And so it is in this R40, and that's like, predominantly, you can see a lot of the residential neighborhoods and whatnot, but there is a business district above and the village overlay district below. So it's kind of sandwiched between these other areas, just to give that kind of broad context. But so just because that's what the current zoning says does not mean you need to limit your ideas today to that, because there are things the town could do. There are zoning amendments that the town could look at, one of which is 40R, which is a regulatory tool that provides financial incentives to the town to create a certain type of overlay in exchange for higher density residential with an affordability component, and encourage to have mixed use with commercial as well. But that's not the only type of overlay you could do. So again, think big, or there's other permitting tools, Chapter 40B, that would, mean zoning was not at play as much. And depending on the scale of development, there might be other forms of review that would be required. But so again, this is just, I believe you have this. Oh, nope, you actually have, you have 2 lovely maps that staff kindly prepared for you. So one is the context map, which is over there as well. And then the other is the base map. So it's just showing kind of just general site constraints, that some of the things that I had referenced, what's already on the site, what environmental constraints are there. You can see the kind of topography lines as well. So just giving you a bit of context. Now, the other big thing to consider as well, again, we want to hear from you from the economic development perspective, but again, I hear that you all have a lot of other, you're here from a lot of different types of businesses and other experiences in the community. So also think holistically, as if there are, your economic development visions might bring in some of these other ideas already. So that's just the general background. I know we're aiming for a noon end time, so I really want the next hour to be hearing from you. And so first, are there any questions about the information that we shared about the site or about the CEDC, who you will also be working with at the next meeting, or just any other background about the process? Okay, great. And we will make sure that those couple of changes are reflected in the slides when we send them out. But right now, trying to just focus on question 1, we just want to hear from you, from your perspective as business owners in the community. What are priority needs? And just, there's a lot of kind of academic ways you could approach talking about economic development, but we want your on the ground experience. And we want to hear from you as business owners. What are the priority needs that the town could support? And so that'll probably be fairly quick. And then I want to make sure where we spend a lot of time is talking about best uses for the site, but we'll get to that. So I'll probably just go in the same order, and you can certainly pass if you want, but we'd love to hear If you have any kind of sense on priority needs for the town to support the local business community and kind of the broader economic development, health of the community. Any thoughts?
Sure. So as per me, in last 10 years, we have seen quite a lot of decrease in the age group that used to come to Cape Cod, but now they are older. So us bringing new crowd is very essential. This way, the season in May that has started weakening rather than in September, which is the old crowd that comes in September. So we need to broaden our season, number one. That will bring more growth for the town.
I think the town of Yarmouth needs to consider increasing its commercial tax base. However it does that, it's important because that eliminates pressure on residential tax base. If you can do that, I think that whatever the use is, if it creates a commercial tax increase for the town of Yarmouth, I think that's going to support the local business community, the residents, the municipality, et cetera.
Great, thanks.
I think if we can use the site to increase business in Yarmouth, as well as having community, things that the community can use in the property. There's fields that are there right now, so utilizing them as part of it, and possibly doing indoor fields that complement that. And certainly there's a need for housing, on the Cape right now.
Thank you.
So this is an interesting concept because I went to Matakis. So I came full circle to going and running around as a kid in the gymnasium to now talking about potential uses for it. And I think when you look at a project with the magnitude of this property, that there's so many different avenues that it can go. And when you look around the room, that everybody's background is from something different, whether it's sports related or Chamber of Commerce or local businesses. And I think that there's opportunities to tie in all of those. On Cape Cod, from Memorial Day to Labor Day, I don't know if you can fit any more people into our small space. So it's about getting people here in the shoulder season, that April, May, and then September, October. And this project could have the capability of doing that. It also could be a place where, for seasonal businesses, seasonal employees are a need, right? So there could be housing opportunities available within this property that could still fit in the overall scheme of what we're trying to do. So, yeah.
Thanks.
It's nice about having kids. They can do a lot of speaking for you, I guess. But I think like raised my kids here in Yarmouth, and being a business owner in Yarmouth, sometimes there's conflicts there, the business community against year-round residencies. And it's challenging because sometimes it feels like we're always working against one another instead of with one another. But coming from a perspective of my business, being a seasonal business owner here in the Cape, each year it gets more and more challenging. And I think the biggest challenge that we face is the housing crisis. People, when a lot of the people that work in the hospitality industry can't find affordable housing, they're going to move to different areas. I'm sure if people, when they're driving off Cape Cod in the mornings, if you have to go up to Boston for doctor's appointments, you see so much traffic coming onto the Cape now because people that are working here can't afford to live here. And that's very difficult in the hospitality industry for us. One of the things that we're relying more and more on is the J1 visa program. And for people who are not familiar with how that visa program works with J1 students, it's basically the hospitality industry would sponsor college-educated kids that will have an opportunity to come and work here in America for a summer and then go back and tell their families and their friends what a great experience they had while working with American students or with other people. And it was started, I believe, back in the Kennedy era to promote America as a good place to live and work. And, you know, it's been really beneficial to us as a resource of finding staff for the restaurant. And the idea is hopefully they have a good experience, they go back home, and then they come back as vacationers years later with their own kids. We've been very fortunate to get involved in that program, and it's somewhat like difficult for us because now we're becoming more and more reliant on that because it's hard to get people in our hospitality industry to work in our jobs when they can't find housing. So if there was some way that there was an availability to take into consideration the J1 student program that's out there for some sort of housing, because a lot of times we rely on some hotel rooms, we rely on our residents to take them in and let them stay in their houses. And I just think that that's, for me, is one of our biggest problems from the business standpoint, and just trying to cater to the influx of our tourism. That's my statement.
Thank you. Thanks.
So I definitely think the diversification of our audiences and who's coming to the Cape is really important, and trying to tap into the next generation of people who've been connected to the Cape for many generations, but maybe don't come here on a regular basis. And I think we talk a lot about seasonal workforce housing. As a year-round business owner, it's just as difficult, right? Like half of my staff is home, you know, at risk, and doctors aren't able to live here. Like Cape Cod healthcare is challenged by the housing crisis on the Cape. And so it goes so much deeper than, you know, the high season of the Cape. It's year round. And to fix that, I think a big part of it is, it would be great to expand the shoulder season by a month on either side, but what about 3 months on either side? You know, where people can actually live here year round and have a great quality of life. So I think housing is really important, but I also, I think that there's the reality of, is there enough on the Cape to sustain a year-round audience? And I do think that it's kind of like the chicken or the egg. And so I think having more rich opportunities for people year-round, working opportunities, but also things for them to do and places to go shopping, and that type of thing, I think has to be part of that bigger picture.
Great, thanks. Sure, yeah.
So being also a seasonal hotelier, working on South Shore Drive for Red Jacket Resorts, I'm in the same boat with Parth and Aiden and the skipper and probably several other people at the table. We are constantly trying to extend our season because the days of rolling up the sidewalks on Labor Day when I first moved here 30 plus years ago, you can't sustain business and economic growth on the Cape if you continue to do that. So we've worked really hard as business people in hospitality to extend our seasons. And we can't do that if we don't have more offerings on the Cape. So I feel like the Matakees site is great for events, tournaments, area to bring more young families to the Cape because there's not as many in them anymore vacationing with inflation. And also the housing crisis is a big deal for us as well. And we represent just under 400 guest rooms just on South Shore Drive alone. And to be able to continue to even operate, we need more workforce and affordable housing as well. So I feel like there's probably room for everybody. We just have to figure out how to get there.
Okay.
I'm going to pass it to David.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to come at this from the perspective of that soccer club I talked about earlier, Cape Cod-based soccer club. And to me, I see opportunity. Opportunity so much for this club, that business. It's for the town and for the business owners that are here. I hear people talk about trying to attract people off season. Soccer club basically operates from September through May. I hear about trying to bring people to the Cape and to Yarmouth specifically. Right now, the soccer club has over 200 home games in a year. Home games on the Cape. None of those games are in Yarmouth. That means people coming off Cape for these games are going to other towns where they're shopping, where they're going to get food, maybe even getting a hotel overnight when they come. None of that's happening in Yarmouth. We have over 2,000 practice sessions throughout the course of the year. Very few of those practices actually occur here in Yarmouth at Homer Park. All these other ones are happening throughout the Cape. You've got a great opportunity here, not so much for this club, but for this club to bring you business. And I really would like to see that happen. We need access to fields. We need sites, facilities to actually hold some of these practices and games. But I guarantee you, we can bring people into the community if we have access to sites here in Yarmouth. So that's my perspective.
Thank you.
I think we're all at this table representing the economic interests of Yarmouth. And my first thought was, how do we get people to bring their wallets to Yarmouth and leave them behind? But after hearing from what the recreation department is doing, it really made me think that, wow, that's what a community is. And they're really kind of fostering a work-life balance and making Yarmouth a place to work, to live, to be. So kind of piggybacking off of that, like how do we make Yarmouth a place that other people want to be, that we want to be? So I think asking ourselves, like, what would we want to be doing on the weekends? What would we want to go to this site for and see? I think there's so much potential for mixed use. There's a lot of problems that can be addressed, like housing we were talking about earlier, job creation too. It's kind of a full circle thing. We have the housing, then we need people to pay for the housing with jobs, and just kind of looking at the big picture there. There's so much potential.
Similar to what Dave was just talking about, senior softball has 400 active members spread across Cape Cod. We play at the Sandy Pond Field here in Yarmouth. We have 3 fields in in Harwich and 1 in Dennis. What we don't have is a really nice tournament quality field. So we run a tournament once a year in September, the week after Labor Day. We get 64 teams coming from all over the East Coast of the US, over 1,200 people, spouses, some kids, grandkids. They fill up hotels and restaurants. We could expand that and do a second tournament in the preseason in the spring and that shoulder season, but we don't have the fields. So we need 300-foot fields, which is typically what you would see for high school baseball, Babe Ruth baseball. We just don't have that. And to get the quality teams, we would need better fields. The other thing that senior softball does is we're not just softball. We're a social community organization. We do philanthropy, we do bowling, we do golfing, we do a lot of stuff for seniors. So when you think of senior softball, think of golfers in pickleball who are on steroids. We run, we throw, we hit, home runs, everything. This is very active senior life. We want to do more. In the wintertime, we'd like to have a place to do batting practice indoor with nets, things like that. There's a place in Sandwich that's a long way to go to for people in the Mid-Cape. We need meeting spaces, things like that, because we have an active group that does rules committee, policies, all these things. We need space.
Thank you.
Yeah, from my perspective, economic development is really about increasing wealth in your community in an equitable way. And looking at what Yarmouth has going on now, especially with the wastewater project, increasing that commercial tax base, I think, is really important. And I think doing it in a way that has no or low cost to the town and doing it in a way that doesn't require additional infrastructure is really important for the town. So at the chamber, we've been looking regionally at sort of needs, and the need for an indoor sports facility with outdoor fields has really risen to the top of the list lately. We have over 4,000 kids on the Cape that travel over 50 miles to play and practice sports. And that doesn't even include the islands. And so they're traveling off and they're going to places like Weymouth, Taunton, Whitman, and into Rhode Island. And that means that all that money is leaving the Cape, as well as, you know, all those parents that are driving their kids off the Cape. So, you know, a flexible indoor sports facility, I think could really bring a lot of business to town. And it could take advantage of not just the shoulder season, but year-round business to put people in the hotels in Yarmouth year-round. So, you know, when we build infrastructure on the Cape, whether it's transportation, wastewater, we're building for peak flow, right? So we build this infrastructure to accommodate July and August, which means it's overbuilt for the rest of the season. So, you know, expanding that season, trying to become more of a year-round economy, I think really has the ability to stimulate the commercial tax base without the need for additional infrastructure. And putting more people in the hotels is important for this town. The hotels pay into a water pollution protection fund that reimburses the cost of wastewater projects by 25%. So increased revenue to the hotels means increased contributions to that fund. We're also considering a tourism district in town as well, which could provide outside resources that could support the operation scheduling around a facility. There's also a lot of private sector money out there that is looking to build these kind of facilities, as well as mass development and the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority that have expressed interest in a flexible space. Jack currently owns the biggest space we have for events on the Cape. We need a bigger space. I mean, we're missing a lot of opportunities to put people in hotels because we don't have facilities big enough to do boat shows or the big golf shows that I think would bring people here. So leveraging outside resources, stimulating that commercial tax base, stimulating and putting people in these hotels in a way that's going to help the town with its wastewater projects, I think are all part of that economic development picture that I think Yarmouth as a town is uniquely suited for.
Thank you. This has been really interesting because even just listening, you already can hear very clearly how a lot of the ideas and thoughts that you've already raised, even without speaking to specific parts of the site or anything like that, connects to the ones I predominantly heard were recreation and housing, just in terms of specific topics that people brought up. But just widely speaking, I think there's a lot of ideas that already are going to touch on these other teams, and so that is it's kind of you know, hopefully leaves the town feeling optimistic that there are uses for the site that I think can meet a lot of needs. There's a lot of potential, and so speaking to the indoor athletic facility, I wanted to ask a little bit more about that, just so I have regional context. So you mentioned there's what does exist? Like, isn't there? I know there's the there's a concert venue in Barnstable, correct? I'm just trying to get a sense Cape-wide of what venues already do exist. What about for like indoor athletics? What is there Cape-wide? You mentioned that a lot of, well, you both mentioned that a lot of your teams travel to these other communities.
So for us right now, the indoor is limited to wintertime, which is called futsal, smaller balls, smaller teams. And we're able to do that in gyms, school gyms.
Okay, yep.
That type of thing. Again, Yarmouth, we're not allowed into Yarmouth for whatever reason. So we're out at all these schools throughout the Cape.
Okay.
Doing these futsal.
Yep.
But there is no true indoor, you know, you mentioned, sorry, I forget your name, a number of spaces. But there's Taunton, Four Kicks, there's South Shore has a complex. There's a number of complexes off Cape.
Off Cape,
that
yeah.
people are going to
Right.
utilize. We would really benefit by having something right off the highway with Maniki's is.
Yep.
Would be ideal.
Yeah. I can just speak to, so I live off Cape, I live in the South Shore, and I can just tell you that there was an area that was redeveloped to be a much larger kind of center for indoor center for like sports competitions and whatnot. I was just there there was a cheer one and volleyball. I mean, it is year round. It truly is. And you know, it gets so busy. They have police details. I mean, it is a large, active site year round. So that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about the just kind of the year-round possibilities that are associated with specifically sport for youth and adults. So with all of that in mind, what are the best uses for the site? Again, a lot of you kind of already touched on that, but I want you to also think, I'll put the map up as well. If you want to, you can come on up and show things on the site, or you can go to the maps on the wall, or you can just speak from your seat. I won't go around. This would be a time where people can just, I think, you know, if you have an idea, we'd love to hear it, or if you prepared a sheet in advance and you want to kind of just relay what you had written on your idea sheet, that's fine too. But the types of things that we're looking to hear are what do you see on this site in particular? If you have a sense of where something might make sense or not, feel free to add that detail, but that's going to be a little bit more of what we do at the second meeting. That'll be more kind of hands-on and looking, you know, doing some mapping and things like that. But if you do have input on that, we'd love to hear it. And then what ideas does it address? Obviously, economic development, I assume, is going to be a big thing, but let's get kind of the detail that a lot of you are raising. So sustaining, you know, the year-round activity for people coming into the community as visitors, but also the quality of life for people who live here year-round. All sorts of things. What does it broadly address? Limitations to consider, Paul. I know you mentioned infrastructure in particular, but you also mentioned how, depending on what the town chooses to do with the site, there's different grants, really, you know, well-funded grant programs to help with a lot of the costs, depending on how well the town is leveraging different uses on the site. There's, you know, mass development you mentioned, and Mass Works and Housing Works, so many programs that depending on the variety of resources you can bring in. So I would say don't like limit yourself to thinking this is going to cost too much money right now. Just remove that and let's think big. And it's our job to kind of do a little more research on grant opportunities and things like that. That said, if you do have any input on the resources or options for collaboration, somebody mentioned the strong interest in private investment for that sector in particular. I'd love to know more. I wasn't familiar with one of the organizations you referenced after mass development. You said
Massachusetts Convention Center.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So if you know of any options for collaboration, feel free to share. But otherwise, we'll be doing some deeper research on that. So I'm going to put just this back up in case anyone does want to come up and, you know, point down the map or on a wall or just speak to it. But so, you know, this is the existing building, which is still, again, the gym, auditorium. I didn't realize there are also some classrooms still in use. So thank you again for sharing that. The athletic fields. Someone mentioned the need for 300-foot fields. What are they currently on that site? Do we know?
So there is a field that doesn't have any, it's just open.
Okay. Okay.
It's not in great condition. It can't be used right now as a softball.
Okay. All right.
In its current alignment, without moving the infield, it doesn't reach 300 feet before you get to the solar panels.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, and that's interesting. I was doing a little more kind of digging on those. So that was an effort paired through the school district. And yeah, so then if the school moves, then what is that existing lease agreement, you know? But again, we're not going to assume that they can be moved. We will assume that anything can happen when we're thinking big right now. And again, keeping in mind the presence of the wetlands, in particular, some priority habitat areas. So, you know, keeping that in mind there. Another little bit of wetland there. And then we want to give us your ideas. If it works with something that's existing on the site that you want to see stay, let us know. If you're seeing it as a, you know, blank slate, say that as well. Does anyone want to start, or do you prefer going in order? I know some people may have already shared all their thoughts, so yeah.
Yeah, go for it. So I got a suggestion. The location of that site is premium because of the highway.
Yeah.
Number two, if the town increases its tax revenue, that can help. I don't know, you guys are more experienced on that. But if the tax revenue is increased, can you diversify your funds to help develop housing that the shortage, like the Yarmouth have the shortage for? Can it be possible? If we focus on just increasing tax revenues throughout the year, imagine what things the recreation can have.
Mhm.
We can have events, we can have conference center where boat shows are possible. Look at Cape Cod, what economy it brings. It has boats, it has golf, it has wedding seasons, all these conferences that happen in Boston, in Rhode Island, in Connecticut. This is a prime location where all of these, this is the economy. All these things can happen year round.
Right, right.
So it needs like a conference center, a recreation area. A lot of these things can coincide with each other, but housing, if the funds are raised, the town can help use those funds to increase housing somewhere else or develop. That will be better compared to housing on this site. Because at the end of the day, imagine you're staying there, oh, we hate it. The first thing, let's say we develop housing, then everyone will be against it, like we don't like events over here. Everyone will be opposing. Right now, economic development and housing, residents, they are all fighting each other. But they don't understand, not the residents don't understand that the taxes and all those funds that the businesses provide to the town are more of a subsidy for their property taxes that they don't have to pay that much compared to look at Sandwich where there's not much of a businesses working there.
Okay. Thank you. That's a good point. And just one thing that I would say about the kind of conflicts between the housing and the business community and people maybe not wanting this near where they live, or they may not want, the business community may not want quieter residential area. It could vary, depending on kind of how those conflicts potentially arise. I will say, just if there were a desire to have multiple uses on the site, looking at it from a permitting perspective as a kind of almost a master plan where a lot of those things are thought out in advance as it's being permitted, that is a possible solution to that particular conflict. But it sounds like you're saying, just broadly speaking, this site has so much opportunity to focus on the economic opportunities outside of housing, that would be your suggestion. Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a question. But that might help too. Like, how much of the 70 acres is buildable?
Okay, so that is a great question. I mean, my understanding is, I know that there is a building study to review the actual constraints within the building, if they're, what could be reused, what would the cost be, et cetera. So then this is also in flux. What would happen with the Emmy Small School? I don't know where the process is. Can anyone from staff speak to, thanks, just like what the timeline is for some of these other pieces? Because that might help. From an environmental perspective, the constraints really would just be relating to, it is in a zone 2, which has limitations, but then also just the presence of the wetlands and whatnot. But otherwise, I'm going to let Bill speak a little bit more to that.
So the purpose of muck around is for you to just put everything on the table. I mean, so zoning, things like that, the solar panels, they're all open for discussion. The school is still working on their feasibility study to determine if this is their site or versus other sites. So we want you to think outside the box. But the most primary issue that we have here, and I don't see the circles up there, but on the maps, there are these very dotted line circles that have well locations. There's 7 wells around here. One of them touches the site, but there is 1,000-foot circumference on those that basically is broader than what the regulations are. So our primary concern here is obviously water protection, but we are at a pretty good distance, 1,200 feet to the closest building, which is beyond the typical setback for wells. So when you look at this site, look at it as there are no constraints except for the wetlands and the wells, which, you know, if you look at the 70 acres, a lot of that sort of, you know, wetlands and things like that are on the edges of the site. So you have pretty clear frontage all the way along here. You have a pocket of wetlands here. So we're not really here to get into the sort of physiography of the site and how we can develop it. We're here to say things like we've been hearing, like there is no conference center, there is no this, you know, sports facilities that people have to drive off Cape for all that. It's really about that bigger picture at this point to then go down to the 3 and then to the 1, and then for consultants to help you figure out, you know, how it all fits together. And, you know, the good thing about this is we're hearing about other areas, like you're concerned about housing, you're concerned about those other things other committees are working on, you're concerned about recreation. If you develop those facilities for recreation, then some of the things that Steve needs in the recreation department obviously can be, you know, facilitated. So, and his group is working on a separate fields plan that'll look at our needs for the community. So it's about trying to meld all these things together on this site, because what we don't want to have happen is for one issue to control it, and then we come out and the 5 other issues come up and say, what about us? So each of you sort of collaborating here then collaborates across multiple issues. And so we're already seeing that in some of the discussion about housing. When you talk about recreation and recreation facilities, we're going to be collaborating with the town recreation groups. So solar panels, schools, all that, that's not your concern. So think outside the box, think about what you think you need. And it's really up to the MUC committee to take all these pieces of the puzzles together in the specificity that you can deliver and create the plan. The great thing is we have to deliver 3 plans to the Board of Selectmen. One of them is going to involve a school, but, you know, by virtue of 3 plans and 5 different committees and an elevated and a moderate idea, there's going to be a lot on the table that comes from people who know the subject matter, and that's why we're doing this in this manner. Then we go out to the public and sort of test these ideas, but each of these committees, your group here really knows the subject matter. The housing groups, economic development groups, and others, you know, are bringing to the table what they know, and we've already heard that. You know, we need athletic space. We could be a leader in that in the Cape. With the amount of rooms we have here and restaurants and other things, and being in the center, why would we have people driving off Cape to do this? So I just want you to know that don't worry about this. The water supply is a concern, and we probably will have to run sewer up here to make this work, but that's our problem. So please continue.
Thank you. And there are options and resources available for addressing a lot of those concerns. So even more reason to not limit yourself. I guess, Bill, the only thing I would add that in terms of looking at the site that people maybe do want to consider is if some of the things that you're sharing relate to an existing structure. Like we did hear, for example, in housing about the existing gym and whatnot, and some had the desire to maintain. So if your idea is contingent on something on the site being maintained or enhanced, certainly share that. Otherwise, think of it as blank a slate as possible if that aligns with your idea for the site.
Yeah, and to that point, the existing structure, we have an analysis for it, and it's going to need a lot of money to bring it back up to code. The auditorium is in better shape than the rest of the building, and I think the town has enjoyed a lot of town meetings at that auditorium, the last one being the wastewater approval. So, but I think that, you know, when you look at the site, you don't have to consider the building as an impediment, or you can consider it as an advantage. But when you say we could use it for something, we're going to test that against whether or not we can afford to bring it up to code to get you to where you want to be.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks.
So with the ideas that have been shared, I mean, some have been pretty specific. We need indoor and outdoor athletic facilities that are not just supporting even local activities, but the ability to draw people to the community. That was a specific example of a commercial, increasing the commercial tax base that feeds into the idea that kind of a broader idea that we also heard about increasing the commercial tax base, broader idea of bringing people to the community year round. But are there other specific ideas? So in addition to that, the indoor athletic complex, outdoor athletic facilities, are there other specific kind of business activities that people see as being appropriate for this site? Because I also heard a desire to support the, the quality of life for the people who live here as well. So it's bringing people in, not just seasonally, but year round, and also enhancing, things that could bring value to the people who live here as well. So other specific ideas for something that you could just put right here?
You're going to have an event center, we'll call it, where you can encompass softball, indoor soccer tournaments, tennis, basketball, etc. Keeping the infrastructure of an auditorium would be beneficial because you can have meeting space. The town used it forever. You can have theatrical things that you can attract people to. You also need some meeting space. So whatever you call a convention center, whether you want to hold a boat show, whether you want to have an RV show, if you just want to have a business convention, you're going to draw folks year round to come to that site. If it's multifaceted under one kind of large umbrella as a sports or event complex, then the uses are limitless, but the opportunities are equally limitless, which then benefits the entire community, as I said before, because now you're going to attract folks to come here to spend money and experience Yarmouth, which they presently can't do other than the beach or the golf course or other things like that. The infrastructure's there to get off of Route 6. It's centrally located, become the central location on the Cape to be a regional attraction for business conventions, sports conventions, you name it. Just draw the folks here, all, rising tide floats all boats. So that's what I think Yarmouth would benefit from. And you've got the blueprint there for large capacity structures to be on that site. I agree, you probably have to sewer it to meet certain demands. But we're in the midst of a sewer project as we're going on now. It's a pipe down the street. I don't want to minimalize it, but let's get real about it, okay? If you can come up with a way to fund that, then Yarmouth benefits across the board. If you can keep the gym and the auditorium as a start, fine. If you can't, start over.
Right. And I think that is also, for someone had referenced, the interest in the kind of private investment in facilities such as this. And I think, later that would be the type of thing where you could get that opinion, about whether, we would want to work within what this existing building can offer or not. They're the ones who would really, address that. So I think that's a good point. It might be an asset, it might not. If that is the particular idea, having some sort of event space and bringing people in, which then also would, that traffic of people that flow is then supporting all of the business community that exists already. So any other kind of specific thoughts for this site?
So I was coming earlier from a perspective as a business owner, but I've also lived in the town of Yarmouth and raised my kids here. Like Aidan was saying, he went to school at Madakees, as it did my two other kids. And if I come from this perspective of living here all my life, I know that I would want something that will benefit our community right now. So a rec center for our kids. I've always thought as when my kids were growing up, it would be nice to have a recreational center, that after school programs would be there available to, struggling parents trying to, manage working two jobs, picking up their kids from school. Whatever happens on the site, I think our community needs to benefit greatly from it. Whether we have a lot more of our senior people are coming to retire here, but they have their grandchildren who come here, and to have a place that they can take their grandchildren to. Now, if money is no object, You could put up a beautiful sports complex with an indoor pool, have programs for our seniors in our community, have programs for our children that are in our community, have pickleball courts, have indoor soccer, have a ice rink. You know, you can go on if the budget is endless. But I think ultimately, no matter what happens with the site, and as a business owner and us coming here and voicing our concerns of what we think we need, we all live here in our community. We want something that also benefits the community. We're not just coming from, this is all about the business community. This is about the people who live in our town. I've lived here most of my life. So if we can get the community behind the project to see the benefit of it, even if you don't agree that I'm coming from a perspective that I need housing for seasonal workers. Yes, that's a great need for me. But I also know I'd like to have a recreational center for kids. I'd like to have an area for senior citizens to go with their grandchildren. I'd like to have after-school programs. I'd like to have something that's in our community that's beneficial for the community, and people will want to come and live in Yarmouth and be vested in our community of Yarmouth, because so many people are selling their houses and moving off Cape, and we have people that are coming here from lived in other areas, and they feel, well, I raised all my kids. I'm not vested in this town. But there are ways that we can bring those people into our town, feel vested in it, and make a better community for us all.
Thank you.
I think that there's an opportunity to talk directly to developers, like putting out some sort of RFQ for the property and get the people where money can solve a lot of problems. But we're coming with ideas, not necessarily with the funding. And so is all of this input going to be put into some sort of RFQ and then put out to developers for them to actually look at a private-public partnership as part of a master plan for the space? Because these are like pretty small individual ideas that we're talking about right now, right? But I feel like we need a developer who has the bandwidth and the pocketbook to come in with their ideas that would fit into our community to be actually to bring this to fruition.
Right. I mean, and that's a good point. There's sort of 7 phases of the process. We're in the initial phase where we're getting public input. And now what's important is when you put out those RFPs or for developers, invariably sometimes you get people coming in and saying, here's a developer's proposal, and then the community comes out and judges it. What we want to do is give the developer sort of ideas and say, this is what the community thinks, and sort of narrow those down into a plan. Then you could segment the site and say, well, if we're going to build housing, it would be this part of the parcel, and we would put out an RFP to a housing developer to do that. If we're going to do the convention center, the sports idea, it would be this part of the parcel, and we would, invite a developer to do that. So yeah, we're really looking at the private sector to drive some of this. We're looking at private-public partnerships where housing is famous for infrastructure grants. There are infrastructure grants for economic development also. So the idea is not put a developer, throw a blanket RFP out there, come one, come all, and then for the next 9 years, 10 years or whatever, judge it. I think what this does is set the groundwork for developers to come in and be confident that the community is backing this plan. And therefore, because I've seen developers shy away from some projects like this because they know they're in for a long road of public input.
Yeah.
This is a long road of public input.
Yeah.
And then to hand them sort of the master plan or 3 alternatives means that there's going to be more confidence in their investment. We take it the next step and say, if this is the mix, this is the public incentive programs we could use with that mix. So staff and other consultants bring it to that. Then you put out the RFP, which says, here's a grant for sewer, here's this, here's an incentive program, because the community backs this plan. So yeah, that is the eventual outcome. that we really don't want to strap the community with constructing all this. There's just too many priorities out there. So eventually, when you come up with these ideas, when CDC does, when housing does, you know, we have a plan that we bring to the Board of Selectmen, and then it is the plan that we invite the private sector into.
Thank you. No, that's fine. I appreciate that. It's important to zoom out and understand that, as Bill said, this is the beginning phases, and the town is kind of doing its due diligence almost by doing a lot of the public input, getting input first from the experts, the people with experience on the ground, to inform the next step of the process, which then informs the next step. And I mean, it is a, you know, a long term before you would actually likely see anything on the site, but this is preparing the community for that by having on the ground information. And then, yes, at some point there would be, even if it's through something like an RFI, which is sometimes communities will, it's a request for information before the RFP or RFQ. And if developers, if there's a site with a lot of interest, you will get responses to that RFI. If it's not really worth their time, then they're not going to do it. But for something that provides a lot of opportunity, you will get very helpful responses from developers who have potential interest. And they could give some insight about some of those things. But right now, it is the big, broad thinking. And so I know we had, Mary, you had referenced some of the sheets that people had provided, so we will take those. But does anyone have anything different other than the things that we've discussed that they wanted to share, or we are happy to just read about it on your form?
I'm just kind of looking at the site itself, and I know it's kind of a bigger idea, but I'm sure people from the town can talk when you go to these meetings. You're trying to sell an idea to as many people as possible. So looking at, what's that? Oh. So when you're looking at it, it's almost like two separate sites on one, right? You have ME Small. And if you look at the way that the building is designed, it almost looks like dormitories. So like a dormitory style living. When we have J1 students that come, a majority of them are in some sort of dormitory style. So from the summer months, you could have dormitory living from like, let's say, June to September. My brother went to Cooperstown, New York to play Little League, and they do that as well, where they have a dormitory style living that helps with the sports complex. And it's beneficial to the hotels because mom and dad come and they stay at the hotel, and the kid and the coaches stay in that dormitory style. So you might have a two-facet housing situation that can promote the sports complex ideas that you have. Or maybe it's the softball team comes and they want to use the dormitory style, you know, in October when they have the tournament. So there's plenty of opportunity there. The gymnasium, so I've had experience playing sports and going to some of these other complexes. And there's a lot of competition that we will see because the level of which these brand new facilities are top notch. So we'll want to be a leader in that area. The one thing for all of us to get excited about this project is in a few weeks, start looking around the Barnstable community. They have the Lobster Pot hockey tournament, and we all see the lobster flags all over the place. We're like, oh my God, what are all these? But it's people from off Cape coming here.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can emulate that in Yarmouth and get people coming to our restaurants and staying in our hotels with some of these ideas. So there's a lot of opportunity, which is exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, to my question earlier about other existing facilities, so there's a rink in Barnstable?
So Barnstable has a rec center that has 2 hockey rinks, and then I believe it can be 2 basketball courts or 1 like style.
Yeah.
So it's like 2 kind of that can go across, or 1 main one that some schools use for their like home gym.
Right. And I bet it is busy and utilized year round.
Yeah, there's a lot of programming that they do for the community. And then certain high schools will use that as their home rink or
Yep.
whatever it may be.
Yeah. Cool. That's good to know. I want to do a little more exploration about what does exist, because that also might inform what Yarmouth could offer that others aren't. But I do want to go back, because we do want to wrap up at 12, and I just have one more thing of next steps to just make sure everyone knows the dates. But my final question is, some people did reference a desire, potential for some mixed use on the site. Does anyone have anything they want to share about that? If they're like, whether it's businesses with housing, or you spoke a little bit about the dormitory housing in particular for whether it's for people attending a tournament or for workers, seasonal workers. But I just didn't want to lose sight of that, because I remembered that was another specific idea I heard a couple people share.
I think with the housing, you have a couple of different types. We have certainly the need for year-round housing. The H-2Bs that come to the Cape is a big part of the workforce, and they're here for about 8 months. And then you've got the J1s that are here for 3 or 4 months. So you've got a number of different types of housing, and you want, whatever we do, we want it to be sustainable, whether it's the housing piece of it or whatever else, whatever other use we have on the site. Again, taking the J1s, if they're here 3 or 4 months, and using those in they're looking for an inexpensive place to live. So the dormitory style housing is probably what works best for them. But being able to use those facilities for the rest of the year, whether it's for sports groups that are coming or some other thing like that, like Aiden said, with the teams that are playing there, you want to be able to have a use, so it's not being used for 3 or 4 months and then sitting there vacant for 8 or 9 months, because it doesn't make sense financially. And the same thing if you're going to do a sports field or indoor fields, pairing it with a conference center, you want to have that building busy all the time, because they're expensive to run. And so it has to be occupied a lot of the time. So you want to make it multi-purpose, I think, so that you can have different uses coming in, and it'll, be successful in an operational standpoint.
Great, thank you. So if you do have other ideas, but like specific, I'd love to see this on this site, it supports these needs, and you haven't had a chance, I believe, Mary, was that form, everybody received the form. So you're welcome to jot down your ideas on that and either give it to Mary, or if you want to email, we can, should they just email you for the time? You want to facilitate, and then we can coordinate?
And then I can forward it to you.
Wonderful, thank you. And so what that means is you have plenty of time to keep thinking, because the CEDC, they're having their version of this meeting, which is a public meeting, for the 24th at 5. And they'll be doing a similar exercise, really the same exercise. But then end of March is when we would come together. So we do have time, if you have other ideas that come up, and we're going to kind of narrow it down, give you the information after this funneling process to say, okay, well, here's what you might want to consider for XYZ at a very high level, but still some overall considerations that will help the combined group narrow it down to three ideas that we can then revisit further. So any questions about those dates?
So I just want to, so I'm Karen Green. I think I know most everybody. I do just want to encourage you all to consider coming to the CEDC meeting, just sitting and listening like we've been doing here today. I know they're excited to kind of reach out and work collaboratively with you all. Their meeting is at the police department.
Oh, thank you.
Meeting space is at like an unbelievable premium here. It's impossible. So, but that's at 5 o'clock, and that's a Monday. All the next 3 meetings, including the CEDC meeting, those are all Monday meetings, all at 5. So you can just kind of plant that in the back of your head, but I hope you consider coming.
The meeting schedule you had shared before with the locations, that's still current, right? What's at the police there? Because I can add that to this.
Yeah,
the
we
location.
could add that. It's
Sure.
It's police department on the 24th, hearing room right here on the 31st, and then I think back. I can't remember. Don't quote me. We'll put it online.
If I
Okay.
could just share, all of you were sent the schedule of where all the other MUC committee meetings are being held and when. If you want me to resend it to you, I can, but I think I sent it to you over a week
Thank
ago
you.
or 2
Thanks,
weeks
Mary.
ago.
I'm sorry, Mary, but then Also, if you can't come to the meeting, feel free to tune in. The meetings are being Zoomed. I think they're getting posted on the website, so even Rec is meeting tonight, I think, at 6 o'clock. So they're just interesting. It's interesting to hear all the different perspectives from the people who are, coming at this with a slightly different viewpoint.
And Karen, if you need meeting space, you just call me and you're welcome to use the cultural center anytime.
All right.
Okay.
So we did have on the agenda time for, if anyone had a comment, any, I mean, I recognize most of you, but yeah.
Thank you very much, Bob Rittenauer, current administrator, and involved the business community in the critical policy-making effort of our community. It's amazing for us, and it's something that, we haven't done enough of in the past, and having your valuable time, energy, input, intellect into this is an opportunity for this community. Something different. I mean, we could do something. Microphone's off. It's off here. We could do something as crazy as a Chowder House Motel and mini golf. And I mean, in all seriousness, the ideas that we spoke of, the needs for housing. I also participated. I'm on the Affordable Housing Trust. We took a look at a brainstorming for various neighborhood style housing, not just take this site and say, we're going to do housing here. And I honestly feel that working with the business community, we have the wherewithal to put together kind of a neighborhood programming that may, instead of having things conflict with one another, have a housing component in one section. There may be an elementary school on one part of it, but also I think the ideas of combining that I've heard today, economic development with recreational opportunities to not only spur additional tourism, shoulder season tourism, but also meet some long-standing unmet needs in our community. I think, to me, that there is an opportunity here. And I just want to say, we're going to need your help. When we get to the next step, we're going to have to get people to think out of the box and do things that this community hasn't done in the past. And I just want you to know, we have the energy and the wherewithal here to do that. And we want to see that done. And I'm glad Alexis said, don't think about financing, because I'm not thinking about a $40 million general obligation bond on the property taxes. We need to put together a financing program that is innovative for this. And I think we can meet these needs. And I know I'm getting a little ahead of the game here, but thank you. This is where it starts, and we're going to follow this right through. And I do want to acknowledge the people that are doing all this work with Bill, the committee. I know the chair is here, and Karen, all of our team, Roby. Just thanks for everyone, and thank you, folks.
Yeah, thank you all for your time, and thanks, Mary, for organizing. So helpful. And I will see you all again at the end of March, but I'll also be at the meeting on the 24th. So it was nice to meet you all. Thank you.